Hello everyone, I hope you're taking it easy and your day has been great thus far. For this video we'll be going through an unboxing and review of Deluxe class Terrorsaur, and this version of Terrorsaur is actually from the Golden Disc collection, so it's one of 4 pieces, still within the general Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy Kingdom subline. And I think this Terrorsaur figure was released, I believe, early 2022. So early part of the year. I think it was tail end of Kingdom, and then this Golden Disc collection came out that did Terrorsaur. What else did it do? A redeco of Cybertron and a few other redecos as well. But anyway, why are we doing Terrorsaur? Well, Terrorsaur is still pretty much part of the Predacon contingent from Season 1 Beast Wars. So this will now be the 6th of 7 Predacons being unboxed and reviewed. The last will, funnily enough, will probably be Megatron, which I think is probably a good way of ending the Season 1 Predacons. Anyway, less rambling. So being a special collection, it's not the usual type of boxing that we're used to with the Kingdom toy line. In fact, this is, as I mentioned, one of 4, so it's basically forms this little Golden Disc type visual look. But with that being said, I think by doing Terrorsaur I'll probably segue into the other 3 items of the collection later down the track, maybe early 2023. Possibly even at the tail end of the year when I have time to do a bit more recordings. So front of the box, we don't get to see Terrorsaur, we just get to see a section of the Golden Disc, and then just the usual Transformers logo, War for Cybertron, and the general Terrorsaur name. It is a deluxe class. If I remember correctly, Terrorsaur, I believe, is a retool of Air Razor. Other side of the box. Top of the box, so it's nothing too overly interesting. Bottom of the box is probably the least interesting. Back of the box, however, is a bit interesting. So we do have a shot of Terrorsaur in his robot mode. We also have Terrorsaur in his beast mode. 22-step conversion, so your standard average steps to transform between the 2 modes. Now I've actually not done Air Razor yet, so I will be none the wiser for the transformation, which I think is both good and bad. But it does mean that when I do Air Razor in the future, it shouldn't take me too long to do that. So that's pretty much a look of the box, a little bit more plainer than what we're used to. I'll open up the box, get Terrorsaur out and whatever else is included, and then we can go through the usual review process. And with Terrorsaur now out of the box, what do we get? We get the usual manual for Terrorsaur in its transformation. We have Terrorsaur, of course. We have 1 handheld weapon, 2 extra accessories, which I'm sure we'll find out where they attach to soon enough, and a literal Golden Disc. Now we'll come back to the accessories in a little moment. So it is actually nice that we get all of those. We'll definitely come back to you in a little moment as well, Terrorsaur. You can just happily nest there for the time being. In terms of Terrorsaur's manual, get rid of the usual disclaimer page. So, in terms of his beast mode, it looks like those 2 little, I'm not sure they're little dart things or not, will attach into his beast mode here. I'm sure we'll have a better look in a moment. His blaster can also attach in 2 different locations in his beast mode. Neither here or there. And he will have some articulation within his beak. In terms of transformation, It's actually not too bad. It's looking pretty intuitive at this point in time for the first 8 steps, which isn't too bad. Going over to the other side. I'm actually going to say a lot of it's going to be intuitive. It just comes down to where certain things start to tab in and things like that. But I will definitely be intrigued to see how well his wings and probably his dinosaur, well, his pterodactyl head fits into things, in the sense of, is he going to be terribly backburdened or not? Looking at the instructions, he doesn't look like he will be, but time will tell. And then we have the last few steps as to where he can attach his weapon. So he can hold it, he can side holster it, and he can also attach it into a part of his wings, which I think are just artifacts from where he could have done the same things in his beast mode. Which I probably won't do very much often because it just looks a little bit weird. I think it's probably weirder for the Beast Wars mob to be doing it with their weapons so much to pure Cybertronian modes. So that is the manual. Pretty straightforward, nothing too overly daunting or unusual. Terrorsaur, we'll come back to you. In terms of your accessories, so we have the one hand blaster, which is definitely a huge step up over the original Terrorsaur figure. So that's pretty much in the one color, but we do have some. Actually, I'm just wondering. It's probably all red, and the main body of the weapon has been painted over in that nice dark silver. So that's that. We'll probably see more of that in the robot mode. We have these little dart things or little protrusion things, which I think apparently attach into somewhere. I think it was... I feel like it was here. Okay, that was one of them. Gosh, are they both going to be like this? Probably. Oh no. Okay. So that's where those go in terms of those. So I believe those will be the probably the back arms of the back of the arms. But yes, that's where they basically go there. I actually would have thought they would have gone on the actual wing tips, but that's okay. So that's that. Terrorsaur, we will also come back to. Now, I guess if we wanted to look at the weapon, I think it was a case of it could be. I think one of them was here on the side, although that being there doesn't necessarily help. To be honest, it does look a bit weird. And the other one, I think, was on the underside of a wing. I believe it was here. Anyway, that actually reminds me of the Generation 1 Seekers having their weapons underneath their wings. Probably definitely won't store the weapon underneath the wings though. Just does look a little bit weird. Especially when you're a pterodactyl, Pteranodon, either. Okay, so Terrorsaur, go there. And then last step, we'll have a look at the golden disc. So it's a nice reproduction of the golden disc from Beast Wars. So we do have the alien symbols on there. I do know one, I think, was the floating island, one was the pyramid. Can't remember what the other ones were. It has been a while. But it is very cool that they've done that. And then even the back is somewhat faithfully reproduced, including the label, The Sounds of Earth. That is very cool. Definitely be worthwhile having Beast Wars Megatron holding that at some point in time. So that was the accessories. Now, Terrorsaur. You're going to be different in the sense that we'll be starting with your beast mode and working our way back up to your robot mode. So I guess what we'll do is we will fully extend out your wings, and there we go. So there is Terrorsaur. So from the top down, front, probably best to do this on an angle as well, just to get an idea of what we're looking at. Bit of a whoops, side. From the back, actually I'm wondering if those were supposed to go there. Whoops. From the bottom up. So it's actually not too bad. He does look like he's basically crunched over in terms of things, but oh well. I will actually say the detailing on his head is actually quite remarkable. Now we did see that his beak will actually move, and they've still even gone as far as putting in some of the white paint apps just to show off some of his teeth, which I think is pretty cool. So you do have that. So that will move in terms of his head, so his head will definitely do a 360 there, and also move up and down as well. It does look like this neck, I dare say, will also have some moving upping and downing as well. So surprisingly, Terrorsaur will have some degree of articulation for his pterodactyl head in its beast mode. So that's actually really cool. In terms of his wings, so that's pretty much what the full wings look like. They can fold in like so as well, which I think is quite cool. Granted, it'll form part of his transformation into his robot mode, but I think even in his beast mode, being able to fully extend out the wings, retract them, is really, really cool. His wings can also fold down as well, so if you want to stand him up with his wings a bit more just closer to his body, you can. At the same time, you can also do it out. The wings can also go upwards as well by the looks of things. Just bearing in mind you do have this little quote-unquote tabbing section that does limit some of your movement. But I think that's also pretty cool in the sense that because that tab is there, you do get to lock in the wings into the beast mode as well. That's cool. Lastly, for articulation, he does have his legs here, which I've probably detached or untabbed in some shape or form. So his feet will be on a ball socket. Just bear in mind orientation. So that will be his beast mode based legs, and I believe the other direction will be his actual robot mode feet. So you've got that ball socket there. You do have this little section here as well that can do a bit of a, I was going to say a bit of an ankle bend, but it's a little bit higher up. Potentially it's a bit like a knee bend, although I think this is the knee bend is more actually up here. So you do have 2 points of bend, which is really cool, especially when it comes to posing Terrorsaur. So you can pose him like that, and he actually will comfortably stand in his his beast mode base legs like that. If you're going to do him a bit more vertical or horizontal, you probably just need to be mindful to just balance his center of mass. But overall, his beast mode is actually pretty cool. I've actually quite enjoyed the beast mode. I was a little bit dubious, given he is a retool of Airazor, but it actually hasn't been a bad retool at all. So overall, I'm quite impressed with his beast mode. I've talked about colors, but Terrorsaur is pretty much 90% red. He does have some little mottling here on his back, as well as some texturing, which I know is really good on Inferno. I already talked about the detailing on his head, which I think is quite stellar. And then on his underneath, you do get to see a bit more of that mottling, I guess, as well as his secondary color of silver. Otherwise, it's pretty much red, and more red. Oh, and the speaker's obviously yellow, so it does add in a little bit more color. So that's actually pretty cool. So that is Terrorsaur's Beast mode, which, yeah, I think I'm actually quite pleased with. So now that we've had a quick look at that, I will actually do the transformation and get Terrorsaur into his robot mode. And with Terrorsaur now in his robot mode. So, before we get carried away, because we usually do robot modes before beast modes. So, in terms of accessories, so we've already seen the golden disc, and unfortunately Terrorsaur can't really hold the golden disc. He can, however, hold his gun. So that's Terrorsaur equipped with his hand blaster. A very tight grip on that as well. In fact, it's gonna be a pain in the... actually wasn't too bad. But yes, it looks like this will be equipable in both his hands, which is to be expected. And those little wrist items, which I think on the original Air Rays are probably where her missiles go. But I actually had these facing the wrong way when I put them on in his beast mode. So I actually turned them around as I was doing the transformation. Now, as for his weapon, there are two other locations that he can possibly mount his weapon, one of which will be on his thigh, which is kind of cool. So you can do it as a literal side weapon. And then the other location, and I guess we'll just do it on this side of the wing, using those same little tabbing section, which isn't... Oh, there we go. Nice little tab. Can pretty much just tab into the side of the wing as well, similar to what we did in the beast mode earlier. And then it will happily rest there. It's definitely not too bad, and it is still pretty cool that we have these options, but it's definitely not as seamless as the original 90s toys. In fact, if I remember correctly, his original 90s toy, his little handgun actually folded over and went behind his head. Now, Terrorsaur, robot mode. So you have robot mode from the front, from the back, the side, top down, bottom up, and then just another shot, I guess, from a bit of an angle. And Terrorsaur will be able to stand. Now the answer is yes, but I have noticed, at least in my one, I don't know if it's an issue with every Terrorsaur, the ball sockets that obviously go into the ankles of the feet is a little loose, so keep that in mind. You could have some posing woes later down the track. I'm saying that because this is also a retool of Air Rays. I don't know if Air Rays had the same issue. I guess time will tell. So before we get into articulation, what do we have for colors? So that red is still very much prominent. Secondary silver is actually quite nice now. It does come out a bit more. We have a nice silver Predacon logo on Terrorsaur's forearm. I do like how they're all on various locations of each of the Predacons. We have a bit of this black from the... that should have been the... When was the underbelly? Yes, that came through. So we've got some of that black on the front chest. I do like how that red sits on top of the silver there. You can definitely tell that there's been some interesting mishap with the paint application there, but that's okay. That little smearing of silver. What can I say? Adds character. And there is his close-up on his head sculpt, which does look quite cool. So overall, in terms of colors and general visual aesthetics, I would say this is actually a very good retool of Terrorsaur. Colors are definitely there. Definitely a huge improvement over his original 90s figure, up until his quote-unquote Transmetal 2. Granted, in terms of the actual cartridge, never saw the light of day, but toys are toys. I do believe it came up in the comics though. Now that we've looked at, had a quick look around of Terrorsaur, we've looked at his colours. Now the fun part, articulation. So starting with his head will only go side to side, interestingly enough. Now it does look like it has a little bit of upping and downing based on just moving this. I don't want to say his neck because it's more than his neck, but if you move that you'll get a little bit more movement, well, options with his head, but his head's a little bit limited, surprisingly enough. But at least it can still do side to side, and it does have some of that up and down, which is still quite respectable. In terms of his arms, so he can do a 360 at the shoulder. He can also do a 360 at the upper shoulder, and that will be it. In terms of his arm, so it does go all the way out. It can go all the way to the front. It can obviously go all the way to the back thanks to that 360 in the shoulder. Can also bring his arm fully across, which is good. So, good example of using that elbow bend there. But it's definitely just a standard elbow bend. It's not going to go backwards. But in saying that, and this is actually no, this isn't part of his beast mode. This is actually something a bit more distinct. So his wrist will also have some bending as well. And can it go? Okay, so it's only designed to go one way, similar to his elbow. That is because it is definitely part of his transformation, because when his arm goes in, his actual hands tuck in to his main body. But that is very cool that we do have some of that option to actually move both at his elbow and his, I dare say, wrist slash lower forearm. So arm-wise, Terrorsaur's definitely got some options there within the arm space. Now in terms of the legs, I will admit the wings are starting to get to me, but that's okay. Will he be able to do the full splits? Yes, he can. Very cool. With that being said, so his leg will go all the way to the front. His leg can almost go all the way to the back. It will become impeded by just the positioning of his wings in his robot mode. He does have a 360 at the upper leg, mainly as an artifact of his transformation. In terms of the knee bend, so his knee can pretty much go all the way that far back, which I think is quite cool. Can obviously go like that, and then do a full extension. So knee's definitely not too bad, and yeah, you can do this little 360 spin there at the upper leg if you so desired. Now we did cover this a little bit in his his beast mode, but he will have this additional bend here as well, so he can do some interesting extra bends with his knee and his lower leg. But similar to his wrist bend, it does appear to only go forward, it doesn't go backwards. So bear that in mind. So you can do something quite weird and remarkable like that with his knee and his lower leg. Because they were pretty much part of his beast mode, so we already know about the ball and socket for the ankle. So that will be pretty much his robot mode feet, and then that is his beast mode feet. So just spin them around accordingly. So overall, I think Terrorsaur has a good respectable amount of articulation in his body. Now, they're probably not supposed to, but because they don't really tab into anything, the top of his, well, his whole pterodactyl head will somewhat float around at the back. So he does get a bit of kibbling from the head. He does get a bit of kibbling from his wings, but it's not too bad. Unfortunately, his wings don't really tab into anything to really keep them secure, so you may have noticed by now, because I've been holding him pretty much by his wings, they've just been moving around as I move him, pose him, things like that. So just bear in mind, if you do hold him by the wings, things like that do happen. Now, I don't know if he's actually got an extra bend in there. He does actually. It's a shame I actually didn't notice that in his beast mode. So he's got 1, 2, 3 different bend locations, possibly even 4. Nope, definitely 3. With his wings, so probably really good in his beast mode. Really confusing for his robot mode. So I'm not sure if I was actually supposed to do a extra bend I mean, possibly do that. In fact, the more you bend, the more you can start tucking things in and actually really make him quite petite. And in fact, by doing that extra bend in there, it actually does help really neaten up some of that back kibble. I mean, the back actually isn't too bad. If we want to talk back kibble, then we just talk about B127. It still looks relatively neat and respectable, especially now that I've actually done this little extra bending in the wings. I'm not sure if you're supposed to, but I actually quite dig the look. It just makes things a little bit more compact and easier to work with. So that's actually quite cool. I do like that. So that is definitely that. To re-demonstrate that Terrorsaur can stand on his own 2 feet, yes, we did. So yes, there you go, Terrorsaur in his robot mode. Definitely not too bad. Quite respectable. Okay, so now how are we going to do you, Terrorsaur, because you're already in your robot mode? Do I have an image of your beast mode somewhere that I can use as a reference point? So I guess for final thoughts, so I'm just using this as a reference because I'm not going to transform him back into his beast mode. So in terms of his beast mode, I actually quite liked his beast mode. Despite being a retool, they have retooled him well enough to work with his pterodactyl. His wings have a good amount of playability in it, subject to what you want to do with them. The head actually has articulation, and even the legs in his beast mode have a few options. It's not just a single knee bend and that's about it, as you know, I think his traditional 90s toy was pretty much just a single bend and that was it. So you do have some playability there in his beast mode. Colors also looked really good. I did mention that even the detailing on his pterodactyl beak and eyes is quite nice. It actually does help bring out some extra detailing there, especially in that sea of red. So from a beast mode perspective, I think they've done quite well. From a robot mode perspective, once again, overall it's actually quite good. The colors are still pretty good. He does actually have a few options with his accessory to put them into a few places. It is nice that they've plugged up some of his, I dare say, his, I don't want to say elbow, his forearm holes, that byproduct of the retooling from AirRazor. So colours were okay, articulation's actually not too bad, which is pretty good. I think he's got more articulation than what the Deluxe class Scorponok had, so that's always a good thing. So that's actually quite good. I think if I had any criticisms, one, the back kibbling isn't too bad. It does look like there is a way to at least make it a bit more compact, but it doesn't tab into anything. So if you're holding Terrorsaur a lot by the back, just bear in mind, nothing's tabbed. Things will periodically move and shift subject to what you're doing, so that can be a little bit daunting. I think the other thing, and I'm hoping it's just specific to mine and not necessarily all Terrorsaurs or even Air Razor, the ankle joints do feel a little loose, which may or may not be an issue when doing poses and things like that. If the ankle joint tends to buckle a bit under, not necessarily strain, but some of the poses you may put Terrorsaur in may just cause the socket to give way, and then Terrorsaur will either fling back, fling forward, side to side, whichever. So I think that's probably just some of my probably two criticisms of the robot mode, just some of the back kibbling and his ankle joints. Other than that, I think it's really good that they ended up doing a figure for Terrorsaur. I think for a while we didn't think that they would, although with the advent of the Legacy line, it's quite possible they would have still done a Terrorsaur then, given that Inferno and Tarantulas came out of the Legacy line. Who knows, maybe they'll do another version of Terrorsaur, but probably quite dubious. But I'd say overall, it's definitely good. If you're a fan of Terrorsaur, I'd say definitely worthwhile picking one up. It's definitely a excellent modernization of his original Season 1 90s toy. And everything does look quite good about him. If you want to collect a modernized take of all the Season 1 Predacons, by all means, get your hands on one if you can. I know I've still seen him at local retail here in Australia, but your mileage may vary subject to where you are in the globe. So yes, overall, Terrorsaur, I'm quite impressed. It's nice to have a bit more of a step back up after doing Scorponok Crew. Definitely is going to be the weakest of the 5 Season 1 Deluxe classes. So Scorponok, Terrorsaur, Waspinator, Tarantulas, and Black Arachnia. So yes, Scorponok unfortunately will be at last position there for the Deluxe Predacons. Who has number 1? I still feel is Tarantulas, but Black Arachnia and now Terrorsaur actually aren't too bad. Waspinator had a few hits and misses, but I'd say overall, compared to what the 90s were, it's a real, it's really good to have this nice 2020s version of each of the Predacons. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Terrorsaur does put the Predacon count to 6 out of 7, so more than likely the next video to be released will be an unboxing and review of Beast Wars Megatron, which will then wrap up the Season 1 Predacons before the end of the year. Hopefully, all goes to plan. So that brings us to an end of the unboxing and review of Deluxe Class Terrorsaur. Yeah, I'm quite impressed. I quite enjoyed it. I'll definitely do some photo shoots of Terrorsaur, which will be predominantly on Instagram. I'll still do something in the community tab. I'll also do a single Terrorsaur short, which will be both here on YouTube as well as Instagram. Subject, both will have different backing tracks. And I will still continue to do a combined Predacon reel. Getting a little bit daunting. 5 took a bit of effort. 6 will probably take a bit more effort, but that's okay, because it also means that there's only one more left, and then I can finish that, although I might even do some extra reels after I finished the Season 1 Predacons. We'll see how things go. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account, link below, as well as other areas like the community tab on YouTube and some short/reels. With that being said, stay safe and take care, and I will catch you all in a future video, which I've said a few times will probably be Beast Wars Megatron for those sticking around for the Transformer content, and for everyone else, I'm hoping to see you in a future video of some other content from my channel.